Malaysia regrets stance of Western nations on humanitarian issues in Gaza. Philippines, China trade blame over collisions in disputed sea. Assalamualaikum dan salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Otto Othman for World Today. Now, Malaysia regrets the stance adopted by several Western nations seen as unwilling to support humanitarian issues in Gaza. Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim said Malaysia is resolute in its position that all forms of attacks on civilians, including Palestinian women and children, must be stopped and humanitarian assistance must be provided to them.
Pendirian kita ialah menghentikan segala bentuk serangan dan keganasan yang mengorbankan nyawa rakyat yang tidak berdosa, termasuk wanita dan anak-anak. Kita mengulangi pendirian tentang keperluan menyalurkan bantuan kemanusiaan dan perubatan, dan Turki tentunya agak ke depan kerana menyediakan pasukan perubatan, kemudahan yang lain untuk cuba meringankan walaupun masih mengalami kesukaran untuk sampai ke kawasan pedalaman Gaza.
The Premier said this during a press conference at the end of his two-day working visit to Turkey. Earlier, Datuk Sri Anwar had a meeting with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan at the Vedatin Palace, where they discussed various issues, including trade, economic cooperation, bilateral relations, and more. The Prime Minister later departed from Istanbul to continue his working visit in Egypt, where he is expected to hold a meeting with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, with humanitarian issues to continue to be the main topic of discussion. Datuk Sri Anwar urges all parties, including the world's major powers, to work towards a ceasefire in Gaza to ease tensions in the region. At the meet and greet session with the Malaysian diaspora and students in Cairo, Egypt last night, the Prime Minister said Malaysia is responsible for voicing the conscience of the Ummah and the Palestinian people, despite not being a big country. About 1,200 Malaysians gathered at the event, which was also attended by Foreign Minister Datuk Sri Dr. Zamri Abdul Kadir, Deputy Tourism, Arts and Culture Minister Khairul Firdaus Akbar Khan, and Malaysian Ambassador to Egypt Zamani Ismail, as well as other Malaysian embassy officials in Cairo. Datuk Sri Anwar, who is on a two-day working visit to Egypt, is scheduled to have an audience with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi at the Al-Ittihadiyah Palace. The Prime Minister is also scheduled to pay a courtesy call on the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Sheikh Ahmed El-Tayyib, before departing for Kuala Lumpur. Large explosions hit Gaza as Israel pummeled the enclave last night. Gaza's health ministry said 266 Palestinians, including 117 children, had been killed by Israeli airstrikes in the past 24 hours. With Israel keeping up daily bombings that have devastated swaths of heavy urbanized Gaza, Palestinians said they have received renewed Israeli military warnings to move from Gaza's north to the south to avoid the deadliest theater of war. According to Gaza's health ministry, most of the dead from airstrikes over the past 24 hours were in Gaza's south. Israel said it was only targeting Hamas fighters, claiming that they often use residential buildings as cover. It was also reported that Israel has amassed tens of thousands of troops around the enclave for an unanticipated ground invasion. The scale of the bombing has left basic systems unable to function, with the UN saying dozens of unidentified bodies were buried in a mass grave in Gaza City because cold storage had run out. Meanwhile, a new convoy of 17 aid trucks entered war-torn Gaza as Israel stepped up strikes on the Palestinian enclave, which is suffering a catastrophic humanitarian situation. Now, with fears of a wider conflagration mounting, Iran said the region could spiral out of control, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned Lebanon's Hezbollah that if it got involved, it would be, quote-unquote, the mistake of itself. According to the UN citing local authorities, more than 40% of Gaza's housing has been damaged or destroyed, and Israel has halted food, water, fuel, and electricity supplies. Sunday's delivery of 17 trucks of aid through Gaza's Rafah crossing with Egypt was the second such operation in 2 days, with 20 lorries having arrived on Saturday following negotiations and U.S. pressure. The United Nations estimates that about 100 trucks per day are required to meet the needs of Gaza's 2.4 million residents, given the catastrophic humanitarian situation. The head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees warned fuel supplies would run out in 3 days. The U.S. President Joe Biden discussed the Israel-Hamas war yesterday with leaders of major Western powers as Israel intensified its attacks on Gaza. Now, according to a statement from the White House, Biden spoke with leaders of Britain, Canada, France, Germany, and Italy. It said the leaders discussed their own citizens trapped in the Israeli-Hamas war, quote-unquote, in particular those wishing to leave Gaza. Fighting raged unchecked and scores more were killed in airstrikes by Israel in Gaza as the humanitarian situation in the enclave worsened. Another convoy of 17 aid trucks arrived in Gaza as the Hamas-run territory faced, quote-unquote, catastrophic shortages. The readout said the Western leaders voiced commitment to coordinate to ensure sustained and safe access to food, water, medical care, and other assistance required to meet humanitarian needs. They also pledged close diplomatic coordination to prevent the conflict from spreading, preserve stability in the West Asia, and work toward a political solution and durable peace. Still to come after this short break. Argentina heads to a runoff election. Stay with us.
Ini produk yang paling bagus sekali. Nampak? Dijamin boleh kurus dalam masa 24 jam. Tak payah susah pergi diet, pergi buat senaman apa semua. Makan produk ni, makan hari ni, semalam kita dah kurus.
Kalau macam tu, balik ofis nanti, kita pergi beli.
Hai. Dah lama tak jumpa kan? Dah kurus sekarang. Handsome.
Waspada pembelian ubat secara dalam talian. Jangan mudah terpedaya dengan iklan ubat kurus tanpa kelulusan Lembaga Iklan Ubat. Ingat, ada KKLIU baru okey.
Thank you for staying with us. Now, Beijing and Manila traded blame for 2 collisions on Sunday between Chinese vessels and Philippine boats on a resupply mission to Filipino troops on a remote outpost to disputed South China Sea. The incident happened near 2nd Thomas Shoal in the Spratly Islands, a hotly contested region where Beijing deploys ships to assert its claims over almost the entire sea. A Philippine government task force said the dangerous blocking maneuver of China Coast Guard vessel 5203 caused it to collide with the armed forces of the Philippines' contracted indigenous resupply boat about 25 kilometers from 2nd Thomas Shoal. China said the slight collision happened after a resupply boat ignored multiple warnings and deliberately passed through law enforcement in an unprofessional and dangerous manner. Video released by the Philippine military showed the bow of the Chinese Coast Guard ship and the stern of the smaller resupply vessel briefly touching. The Philippine vessel continues on its course. China claims almost the entire South China Sea, through which trillions of dollars in trade passes annually, and has ignored an international ruling that its assertion has no legal basis. 2nd Thomas Shoal is about 200 kilometers from the western Philippine island of Palawan and more than 1,000 kilometers from China's nearest major landmass, Hainan Island. Manila summoned Beijing's ambassador today over 2 collisions between Philippine and Chinese vessels in the disputed South China Sea.
While no lives were lost in the collisions yesterday, China's provocative and irresponsible actions have clearly imperiled once again the safety of the Filipino crew. The Chinese vessels did their reckless and illegal acts with full knowledge that their movements can cause a collision. And this time, our fears happened.
India said its relationship with Canada is passing through a difficult phase, and there had been, quote-unquote, continued interference by Canadian personnel in New Delhi's internal affairs. Now, the Indian government is angry that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau last month suggested Indian agents might have been involved in the June murder of a Sikh separatist leader in British Columbia, but India denies the allegation. Now, Canada had to withdraw 41 of its diplomats from India last Thursday as New Delhi decided to unilaterally revoke their official diplomatic status. Trudeau said on Friday that the Indian government's crackdown on Canadian diplomats was making normal life difficult for millions of people in both countries. India's Foreign Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said India had invoked diplomatic parity under the Vienna Convention because they had concerns about the continuous interference in their affairs by Canadian personnel. Canada's Foreign Minister Melanie Joly said last week India's stand was unreasonable and unprecedented and clearly violated the Vienna Convention on diplomatic relations. Around 2 million Canadians, or 5% of the population, have Indian heritage. India is by far Canada's largest source of overseas students, making up roughly 40% of study permit holders. Now, the right-wing populist Swiss People's Party, which campaigned against mass migration and woke madness, comfortably topped Switzerland's general election yesterday. Now, according to early results, the SVP took 29% of the vote in elections to the lower house of parliament, improving its vote share by more than 3 percentage points. SVP President Marco Chiesa said they have received a very clear mandate from the Swiss population to put on the table issues which matter to them, such as illegal immigration. The SVP came far ahead of the left-wing Social Democrats on 18%, while the centre-right party, the Centre, and the right-wing party called FDP, the Liberals, were both on course to finish on round 15%, with all three chasing parties largely flattening. Meanwhile, the Greens could not replicate their dramatic gains at the last election in 2019 and slid back 4 percentage points to finish fifth on 9%, according to the projection. Switzerland, a wealthy European country of 8.8 million people, voted for all 200 seats in the National Council lower house of parliament and all 46 in the Council of State's upper chamber. Argentina's economy minister, Sergio Massa, and an anti-establishment outsider, Javier Milei, will face off in a runoff presidential election. With 76% of votes counted, Massa surpassed everyone by pulling ahead with 35.9% of votes, while Milei secured 30.51%. The two will compete in a 19th November runoff election, with the winner to take office 10th December. The far-right liberation economist Milei had been polling as the frontrunner ahead of Massa, who has overseen inflation of almost 140% and poverty that has reached 40%. Celebrations broke out in the election bunker of Massa, the candidate for the center-left Peronist ruling coalition, which has dominated Argentine politics for decades. Latin America's third biggest economy is cracking under decades of recurrent fiscal crisis, marked by debt, financial mismanagement, and inflation. Milei, who turned 53 Sunday, has vowed to dollarize the economy, slashing spending, and dynamite the central bank. In response, Massa's campaign took pains to highlight what cutting hefty electricity and public transport subsidies would mean for people's pockets. To woo voters, Massa went on a pre-election spending spree, slashing income tax for much of the population in a move analysts said would only make the country's fragile financial situation worse. Latin American leaders held a summit Sunday, urging the United States to change the way it deals with the flood of illegal migration heading to its borders. Now, in Washington, this is a red-hot issue with political fallout on the scale of the wars in the West Asia and in Ukraine. without explicitly naming the US. Presidents of Mexico, Cuba, Venezuela, and other leaders of the region called on destination countries to end, quote-unquote, inconsistent and selective policies, such as granting entry to certain nationalities but not others. They also called on such destination countries to broaden above-board legal and safety paths by which migrants can travel to such wealthier countries, a nod to enhancing mobility for workers seeking a better life as they flee countries with gang violence, corruption, and poverty. The statement after the meeting held in the southern city of Palenque was read out by Mexican Foreign Minister Alicia Bárcena.
Quinto, hacer un llamado a que los países de destino adopten políticas y prácticas migratorias acordes con la realidad actual de nuestra región y abandonen aquellas inconsistentes y selectivas para evitar producir arbitrariamente tanto efectos llamada como efectos disuasivos, tales como la regularización de ciertas nacionalidades.
Next in sports, Aaron Chia, So Woo-yik win first World Tour title. Stay tuned.
Beli!
Betul! Shopee ada penghantaran percuma! Kenapa bayar kalau dapat penghantaran percuma di Shopee? Beli sekarang di Shopee.
Thank you for staying with us. National men's doubles pair Aaron Chia, So Woo-yik finally won their first World Tour title with a victory over Indonesians Muhammad Shahibul Fikri, Bagas Maulana in the final match of the 2023 Denmark Open in Donetsk last night. Playing in Just Bank Arena, the fifth-seeded 2022 world champions were in a class of their own as they strolled through the match, winning 21-13, 21-17 in 33 minutes. In contrast to their nervous opponents, Aaron Woo-yik played their maturity born of their hard-earned experience as Malaysia's #1 men's doubles pair, controlling the court well in the first set and building a 5-point lead at 11-6 before finishing off their rivals with a difference of 8 points. The Indonesians tried to mount a comeback in the second set, but Aaron Woo-yik continued to dominate and kept them at bay with their high-quality gameplay, with Aaron sealing their well-deserved victory with a strong smash. The Denmark Open, a World Tour Super 750 championship, is Aaron Woo-yik's first World Tour title after 6 finals, including 3 this season, with the last being the China Open in September. Meanwhile, national men's singles player Lee Zijia ended his Denmark Open 2023 campaign on a low note when he lost the final match to China's Weng Hongyang. World 11th ranked Zijia was unable to repeat his performance when he won the Arctic Open in Finland last month and was clearly not at his best, fizzling out and losing 12-21, 6-21 in 33 minutes. Hongyang's win means that the world number 22 has now beat Zijia 3 times out of 4 encounters. Even with the loss, Zijia takes home a total of $28,900 in prize money as runner-up. In tennis, rising star Ben Shelton said he planned to celebrate his first ATP Tour title with a cheeseburger and credited his quote-unquote more subdued approach for his Japan Open victory today. Now, the 21-year-old American beat Russian Aslan Karatsev 7-5, 6-1 in Tokyo to lift his first trophy just over a year since turning professional. Shelton's powerful shots and on-court theatrics have made headlines, but he said he had made a conscious effort to be calm, cool, and collected this week. The world number 19 said his new approach had really helped him to keep his head on straight. Shelton was more composed than world number 50 Karatsev, who smashed his racket in the second set as the match spiraled out of control. Shelton won the first set after breaking his opponent for a 6-5 lead and comfortably took the second as Karatsev fell to pieces. Shelton had to work hard to reach the final in Tokyo, with 3 of his matches going to 3 sets. He looked dead and buried in the semi-final, with American Marcos Giron as set-up and serving for the match at 5-2. He said he would try to let the title sink in before he returns to action in Vienna next week. Meanwhile, in Sweden, Gael Monfils turned back the clock to win his first ATP title since January 2022. He came from behind to beat Russian qualifier Pavel Kotov 4-6, 7-6, 6-3 in the final of the Stockholm Open. With the victory, the 37-year-old became the oldest winner in the tournament's history. The Frenchman is only the fourth player above the age of 37 to win an ATP Tour title since 1990, joining Roger Federer, Ivo Karlovic, and Feliciano Lopez. Monfils lost just 2 sets through the tournament as he claimed the 12th Tour title trophy of his career. Now, over in Belgium, world number 36 Alexander Bublik claimed his third Tour level title with a 6-4, 6-4 victory over Arthur Fils at the European Open in Antwerp. In a match between the third and fourth seed, respectively, the Kazakhs hit 11 aces and 28 winners to down the 19-year-old Frenchman in just over an hour and a quarter of tennis. The straight sets victory caps off a dominant serving display at the Belgian ATP 250 event, in which Bublik won 136 of 148 points behind first serve. The Antwerp title is 26-year-old's second season and third overall, having already lifted the Halle Open trophy in June this year, as well as the 2022 edition of the Open Sud de France in Portslia, with Bublik improving to 3-7 overall in Tour finals. In Formula One, Red Bull's triple world champion Max Verstappen held off a charging Lewis Hamilton to take the 50th win of his Formula One career and a record equaling 15th of the season at the United States Grand Prix last night. Norris, lining up on the front row, sees the lead from pole sitter Charles Leclerc in the first corner, but his hopes of taking a first win in his 100th start had faded by the half distance. Verstappen was fifth by the end of lap 1 and moved through the field, starting on mediums and pitting for more on lap 17, using the DRS drag reduction to take the lead from Norris on the 28th of 56 laps. Verstappen did not just disappear into the distance, however, with the champion's brake issues giving Mercedes hope that they might be able to reel him in with an upgraded car. Hamilton, on a fresher mediums on the final stint with Verstappen on hards, started the last lap just 1.8 seconds behind after being 5.3 adrift when he passed Norris for second with 7 laps remaining. The victory was Verstappen's third in a row in Austin and equaled with 4 races to spare the record the Dutch 26-year-old set last year for most wins in a single season. With the win, Verstappen increased his unassailable lead over Mexican Perez to a whopping 228 points.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it started already with starting in P6, but I think the whole race I was struggling a lot with the brakes, so around here there are quite a few braking points, and I couldn't really have the same feeling as yesterday. So that definitely made my race a bit tougher out there today. But you could see it was very close to the end, and then also with the back markers, when the tires are already going, it makes it all a bit more difficult.
Mercedes star Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari's Charles Leclerc were both disqualified from the US Grand Prix after their cars failed post-race inspections. Now, former world champion Hamilton had finished second behind Max Verstappen in Austin, while Leclerc came in 6th. Both drivers saw those results scratched. However, after a technical team found excessive wear of their cars' floor planks. The disqualification came following a hearing that took place approximately 4 hours after Verstappen, who has already clinched the Drivers' Championship, powered to victory in Sunday's race. A statement by the motorsport's governing body, the FIA, said both teams had acknowledged the findings of the inspection, stating that the irregularities were likely caused by the bumpy track and the tight turnaround for Sunday's race after Saturday's sprint. The stewards note that the onus is on the competitor to ensure that the car is in compliance with the regulations at all times during an event. Hamilton's disqualification means McLaren's Lando Norris was promoted to second, with Leclerc's Ferrari teammate Carlos Sainz, who finished fourth, bumped to third. Mercedes driver George Russell moved up to fifth from seventh following Leclerc's disqualification. National Wushu Queen Tan Xiong Min continues to make Malaysia proud after winning the gold medal in the women's Nan Kuan and Nan Dao combination events at the 2023 World Combat Games at King Saud University in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Xiong Min, the 2019 World Championship, fresh from winning a silver medal in the events at the just concluded 2022 Hangzhou Asian Games last month, topped the competition after collecting a total of 19.486 points. The silver medal went to Uzbek athlete Darya Latisheva with 19.292 points, while the bronze went to Iranian athlete Hania Rajabi with 18.950 points. Meanwhile, Malaysia also won bronze in the women's Jianshu and Piangshu combination events through Pang Puyi, who collected a total of 19.392 points in the final competition. The 2023 World Combat Games from 20 to 30 October features a total of 16 combat sports including Aikido, fencing, judo, karate, Muay Thai, sumo and taekwondo.
76 minit tanpa henti. 76 minutes non-stop. Transparent and concise. Paparan komprehensif, ringkas dan padat. Saksikan Kanta 744 malam. Berita perdana 8 malam. Malaysia Tonight, 8:30 p.m.
Well, that ends the bulletin for today. Wrapping up with a story recap, Malaysia regrets stance of Western nations on humanitarian issues in Gaza. So tune into Malaysia Tonight coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. I'm Otto Othman, Malaysia Madani, tekad perpaduan penuhi harapan.